Microsoft no longer. This is Matt and Horky. We're talking about Bungie getting acquired by Sony. Horky, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I was just looking at the Microsoft logo for the background for this video. There's going to be the movies playing, the cutscene movie from Destiny, all the way up to season 14. And I realized that the Microsoft logo kind of looks like a tattoo a bro would get, like maybe in the early 2000s. Not quite like kind of tribally arrows. Anyways, so Bungie, their first big games are Marathon and Myth. Marathon was like the first big shooter you could get on a Mac, probably like the only good shooter on a Mac, an exclusive to it, I think. Microsoft acquired them in 2001, and they used a Bungie project at the time as a launch title for their new Xbox. It was Halo. That worked out pretty well. I'm still playing Halo Infinite today, 20 years later. Bungie left in 2007, and Microsoft kept the Halo property. Bungie signed a 10-year publishing deal with Activision in 2010. Their very first project with them was Destiny in 2014, and then a sequel in 2017. So they are solidifying themselves as humongous heavy hitters in the industry. 2019, they ended the relationship and they would self-publish Destiny. And in January 2022, Sony Interactive Entertainment has acquired Bungie for over $3 billion to be a part of their family of studios. But they're saying Bungie will remain independent and still be a multi-platform studio and publisher. So, Horky, what did you think when you first saw this?
I mean, it seemed to me like Sony has always been... Well, I was going to say, Bungie's basically... I don't even think about them as being related to Halo at all anymore anyway. Like, it's just sort of been so long that I've just sort of forgotten about that. I just don't even consider it anymore.
Okay.
And, I mean, I was thinking, like, I think of it associating Sony with Destiny because that's where I first played. I remember I got their, like, I think I got the white PS4 when it came out.
Right.
And so for me, I always just thought of it as like, oh, this is like, Sony is where I went to play Destiny. So I don't even really associate it with Microsoft stuff so much anymore. I mean, I know it came out on PC. It was on Battle.net, weirdly enough, for a little while before it went to Steam.
Yeah. I mean, I remember Destiny came out and it seemed to be... like, it was a big hit when it came out, but it seemed like when the Taken King expansion released, that's where it really solidified a lot of the things that they were working on, and people seemed to really get on board with it. That's when I first started playing it. I really enjoyed playing with my cousin, and he has like a hardcore group of people where that's the game they play. They play it all the time. They're all about daily goals, weekly goals, all that stuff. I've never really been into the looting part of it, but so like that main hook isn't there to bring me back, but I really, really loved just the way it felt. It felt like playing cooperative campaign Halo, except now you have a couple friends instead of just one, and you're going through these little bite-sized missions that you can do. You know, you can sit down, you can play for like 15, 20 minutes or whatever, and the bosses are usually a pretty fun challenge. The bosses are usually like, they sit in the middle and you hide, and you take turns shooting at them and you can revive each other. And it's just like a very forgiving play style. And like for a shooter, it seems odd to say that it's relaxing, but I've always found Destiny and Halo still having the DNA of Bungie to be really relaxing games. So I think they've proven themselves as, obviously they can make incredibly popular shooters, but they also have their own significant style. And that's their biggest thing moving forward.
I never really went back to the game. I played it first when it came out, and I didn't really get around to any of the expansions because, I don't know, I guess I just got kind of burnt out on the looter aspect of it, like you were saying. It's kind of just ends up becoming a kind of a grind.
Yeah, for sure.
Always kind of...
There was one time when I like really got into unlocking the abilities, and I felt the addictive pull of it, where I was like, talking to my friend who was really into it. I thought, oh yeah, I'm ready to unlock this. And he's like, yes. He knew what level I was at based on sort of like the phase of addiction I was in. He's like, enjoy this while it lasts. This will plateau, and then you'll have to find kind of new ways to reach that high. And so I did try Destiny 2, and I really liked the changes that they had made. You know, one of the interesting things is they're saying, Sony and Bungie are both saying this is going to remain multi-platform because they've built up such a huge audience multi-platform. I guess it would be, like you were saying earlier, it would be pretty ballsy to go completely Sony on this and force all of that player base to hop over. But they're saying that they actually want to focus on non-gaming properties. So we could be seeing, and this is like what Sony wants to do with them, and that what Bungie has been trying to get into for some time now. So we could probably be seeing, I don't know, a movie, maybe whether it's going to be like in real life or like CGI. We're seeing a lot of gaming properties hit the mainstream, like The Witcher, and I mean the last.
Halo's got a series coming out sometime.
Oh, interesting. So Bungie and Halo are still like linked all this time later. I don't know. Are you excited to see a Bungie TV show or a movie? Not a Bungie one.
Not particularly. Not particularly.
Yeah,
it's not something I follow.
No. It's. I mean, I always give those things a chance. And The Witcher seemed fine.
To clarify, I guess if it's Destiny related, I don't really have much of an interest, but I'd certainly be interested in seeing any kind of like, new stuff that they can come up with. Like if they come up with some kind of new IP, I'd be interested. Sure.
For like a TV show.
Yeah, or even if it's like a cross thing where it's like they come out with some new game and that has its own TV show with it or whatever. Like, some kind of like expanded universe related to whatever it is.
Well, both of their big projects, Halo and Destiny, have been the same thing. They nail the gameplay, and they have generally, I mean, like Halo's got a pretty gigantic bit of lore. I know you've read some of the Halo books, and Destiny's got very deep lore that seems to satisfy a lot of their fans. So it would make sense. I mean, you have the action, and they have the predilection to go towards filling out these worlds, and I would definitely give it a chance. Like you're saying, if it was Destiny, I feel like it's so deep already. I would feel like, do I have to do some homework with this? Hopefully they would do it in a way where it's accessible, but I would be interested if they're coming up with something brand new that you could get on the ground floor with. Yeah,
and where would they even like distribute that? You think there'd just be some kind of Netflix thing?
That's where I think it would be on Sony's streaming platform.
Yeah, I would assume it would be something like that they'd want to hold control over it.
Yeah, because they were, I feel like on the PlayStation Store for the last couple generations, they've been really trying to push you to download shows and like even trying to put out exclusive material there, which is pretty hard to do. I mean, when Netflix had sort of conquered streaming by having this huge catalog of stuff, they started dumping all their money into new material, which people didn't think made sense at the time, but now we're seeing that like you need that new stuff. So I don't know. I guess Sony's always looking to expand because why not? But it's expensive to make TV shows and for you to try to get anything going. I mean, okay, look at Apple. Apple's a huge company already in this media world, and they've really struggled to like get very many shows off the ground or like make that a place to subscribe and watch.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the type of shows too. Like I don't know how many good shows there are actually in Apple, because if they're not very great, then you can try to keep throwing money into it, but there's really no guarantee.
Yeah, you kind of need to have that hit. I mean, but they tend to bring in all these like big stars. Jennifer Aniston was on the morning show. Mm-hmm. I don't recognize any of these. Hello Jack, Invasion, Acapulco, El Defo, Snoopy in Space, Fraggle Rock, Back to the Rock. So they're getting the idea of like going back to the 80s and 90s and trying to mine some of that nostalgia for the people that, are now adults with their own kids looking to watch something they recognize.
Do you think they want to like throw in TV shows to like PlayStation Plus subscribers? Or if they had like one of those, something like a Games Pass service.
Yeah, that would make sense actually. And we've heard that they've been talking about sort of reformatting PS Plus or like PS Now to make it closer to Game Pass. I mean, the Game Pass is obviously just the best way to do it. Let you download the game. Streaming.
Oh yeah.
Streaming can be great. Like every once in a while, I do like to use the cloud gaming portion of my Ultimate Game Pass subscription. If it's a smaller game that I'm not sure I really want to take the time. It's funny. It's like, it's usually the smaller games I do it for, even though you make sense to not have to download like the 50 gig game. But there's definitely a difference when you're streaming it as opposed to downloading it. But if you just want to hop in and try something out, that's useful. But definitely, like, people want to download games. And a lot of people are still, they have data caps and they don't want to be, they just can't afford to be doing all of this game streaming. But yeah, maybe when Sony tries to compete a little more with Game Pass, they'll add some of this other stuff, you know, like a more cross media. I never know how super successful that is. I know, like, wasn't it Remedy that tried to do that with was it Quantum Break or whatever, or on Xbox they had that game with a TV show as well. And it seems like a lot of effort for, you're like really stretching to give your audience something like that they might not necessarily really, like a really small percentage might actually be interested in.
Right.
Yeah, it costs so much money. So I don't know. I think the biggest thing with this is that, like, we know Sony, their big thing is God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted. They like character-driven, cinematic, third-person, you know, big dramatic single-player story games, but they don't really have a lot of shooters that are theirs. So
No Doom. They don't have, like, you know, their own sort of Doom equivalent.
yeah, or like a Gears of War, or, you know, they had Resistance, which I thought the Resistance 2 was pretty great. It would be nice to see that come back with Insomniac, but Insomniac is already doing so much for Sony with Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man that it's like, just keep them doing what they're doing. I think it was a pretty good move to go with Wolverine. But I don't know. I mean, I guess this is going to, like, somehow, if it's going to stay cross-platform, I don't know how it helps them other than making them more money. Like, what am I missing?
I have an idea that, like, I think this is all going to come around with, like, I mean, maybe not directly, but it's like one step toward them having more of a presence on PC.
Okay.
And I think they're going to, like, I would not be surprised if we saw essentially a Sony store for games on PC. So, because, like, I mean, I always figure with games in general, console makers, I think they can't be making the most of their money off selling the consoles. Like, that's not the incentive for them.
Right.
Their incentive is to get that 30% or whatever cut of every sale that goes through their store. So the more people they can, like, actually get the purchase stuff on their stores, the better. And, you know, with more games coming to PC, it seems like from Sony's library, it only makes sense to, like, consolidate that stuff to their own store so they can start collecting that instead of, say, you know, Steam or, you know, Epic Games.
Man, I think that's a genius idea. I didn't even think of that, Horky. And when you think about how the last couple of years we've seen so many of the biggest Sony games, their absolute biggest franchises, all making their way over to PC after never being available anywhere other than a PlayStation before. And obviously, like, going to PC well after they've had their chance to make all, like, 90% of the sales they're going to make on a PlayStation. And then, like you're saying, it's all about getting that cut. Because if you could just start selling Destiny to people on PC, or, like, could they have a Destiny storefront on the Xbox somehow? Where, so you think they're going to have their own? So if you're on PC, let's go back to PC. So that mean you have to have Steam. Do you think they want to, like, not compete with Steam, but have a similar sort of storefront? So you're going to have Steam, an Ubisoft store, an Epic Games store. You're going to have your Sony store. I think
Sony specifically there's a good use case to be made there because they have, well, I mean, if we're just looking at, like, historic things they've done, right? They refused to allow like, for people on Sony systems to play with people on any other system. And they have their own chat system, their own friends list, your own party, etc. And it just makes sense to, like, if you want to actually allow that cross-platform stuff to happen, that you also get the PC players to sort of engage in that same system somehow, so they can, you know, and especially like Game Pass, right? They want to compete with Microsoft Game Pass. Well, they can directly compete against it if they have the stuff on PC, right?
Right. Well, and also
now you can access all that PlayStation stuff, PlayStation Games Pass, and cloud, support for games, for Sony specific games, all on your computer.
Yeah, and a lot of that money that's made with these online games is buying the cosmetics and all those little microtransactions. I feel like we just forgot about that word anymore. Like, remember when microtransactions used to be a big thing, and now it's just, that's in games. You don't even...
I know it's probably not the first one, but like maybe it was the horse armor for what was it? Oblivion.
Okay.
That was like, I remember that being a huge debate. People first started talking about microtransactions. They're like, "Oh, horse armor? What the hell is this?"
Yeah, and I like Sony has said there were those leaked emails that were going around where Sony was saying like, people have tried to convince us as to why crossplay would be worth it for us, and it seemed to be that their stance was, if we can't make money off of that like hat or whatever you're gonna buy, that cosmetic you're gonna buy in Fortnite, then we don't that doesn't work for us. Like, yeah, it works for Fortnite to be on everything because you have to pay Fortnite when you want to buy the cosmetics. And that's the stuff that's where their money's really being made. So if you have, because Destiny 2 is actually free to play, right? I believe so.
Yeah, it is.
So if you've got, that makes perfect sense for Sony to get out there on PC and just start accessing this huge audience. I mean, I guess the biggest thing will be Destiny 1 proved itself. Destiny 2 seems to be, like a more refined version. I haven't looked at like the sales numbers out of or anything, or like the player counts.
I think Destiny does pay, or well, previously they paid for cross-platform support for their players. I think you can play with other Destiny players on different systems. But, it was one of those case-by-case things where it's like they had to pay in order to have that happen. Sony's going to get their money in one way or another. Mm-hmm. And I would assume that that's not going to happen now because, well, they're owned by Sony now, so they wouldn't have to pay anything.
Well, looking at some of these player counts, it looks like Destiny 2 still, it's still doing quite well. And I believe that it's the second most profitable shooter franchise.
Yeah, they have
obviously second to Call of Duty.
There's some kind of, I think there's a new expansion coming out. I think within the next 2 months. It's really close to, I think, the Tiny Tina Wonderlands game release as well.
Oh, Tiny Tina's going to smash it into the ground. So in 2021, 900,000 people playing Destiny 2 daily, and it ranks number 13 on Steam and number 31 on Twitch. So that's pretty good for coming, a couple years into, actually that's, Jesus Christ, the sequel's in 2017. So that's 4 years after the sequel. So I would assume for sure there's going to be a Destiny 3, and that'll be that'll be interesting if they use the Destiny 3 launch to change anything now that Sony owns it. If they are going to try to have a Sony store, that'll be the big one. Like, I wonder what Destiny player, like, what are their common complaints? Some people that I had read their comments of were like, hopefully this means we get bigger stuff, and like more frequent, because I'm sure their player base just chews all that content up. But I don't know, like, what can they really expect? Like, that's a lot of stuff.
That's not gonna change with just because Sony's owning it. I mean, they literally said that they're gonna be remaining somewhat independent.
Right.
I mean, I guess they can leverage, like, I don't know how Sony is structured as far as Sony internal studios go, but like, if these other companies that Sony owns can leverage, like, better, like, very specific art studios that are sort of like, contracted out internally, or animators, whatever else. Like, I don't know if anything like that exists, but I mean, maybe that kind of thing is there to help. I don't really know. I can only speculate.
Yeah, well, I guess we won't really know until time passes and they start making some releases and we start seeing if there is any sort of difference. And who knows, like, it might be like Sony they make movies, and they've had really successful movies with their partnership with Marvel and the Spider-Man trilogy, which really has more to do with them partnering with Marvel and having a better blueprint for how to make good movies compared to the sort of disastrous Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. You know what, man, like, just like the failure of Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 was the only thing I knew about Andrew Garfield. And from seeing him in other stuff, like, he actually seems like not only a good guy, but a pretty good actor.
Sucks.
Really, like, soiled his reputation for a while, but he's having a bit of a comeback now. He's in that movie where he plays the guy from Rent.
I was going to say that, like, also, just Bungie, I mean, they've done nothing but Destiny for almost 10 years now. They're going, I mean, since like 2014, right? Yep. And however long it went prior to that, leading up to the development of Destiny. So, like, which I'm sure is probably 10 years at this point. So, like, they haven't put out anything else than Destiny for, like, a pretty good amount of time.
And before like, that, Halo was not that much different.
At least a generation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I feel like they're just going to focus on the media stuff, and they're probably just going to keep cranking out Destiny. I don't think I don't get the feeling that they have this need to put out, an RPG or like a platformer or something totally different. I think they're going to do what works, and I think they want to just go beyond games at this point, because you'd think if they were sick of Halo, then they wouldn't have made Destiny, which is just slightly more Halo. It's just more, add a bit of multiplayer, and it's like just a modernized version of it. So I guess that's what we'll have to wait and see. So, all right. And you said you've been playing Yakuza 7?
Oh yeah, it's really good. Now I get all the hype now surrounding it, because I kept seeing everyone say, "Oh, it's good. It's better than 0," and like I can really see where they go with that. The change to like the turn-based system, it does make a lot more sense to me than I initially thought it would. And they're like back at like that good quality writing. At least as far as like sub-stories go, they're goofy. The writing is, crazy Yakuza stuff, right? But it's still pretty good, really fun. Gameplay mechanics are great. Stuff actually makes more sense in the game now than in previous games. Like, the way they handled like weapons and stuff, it's always kind of crazy to me in earlier games.
What, and just finding random weapons on the ground and hitting?
Well, yeah. Like, it was kind of crazy. Like, I feel like they had a crisis on what they wanted to do with those around the time of Yakuza 6, because they took out a lot of the items, and maybe it was Kiwami or that changed this actually, but and I can't really remember. But like now in 6, you can't keep weapons in your inventory. You just you find them only during the battles, and they only have, all of them uniformly have 3 uses each, and then they break, and then you can't take them out of battle. So it's like they just sort of feel like these random elements that just happen to be part of battles, not necessarily this thing that you think about, throughout the game.
Right, you're not trying to stack a bunch of baseball bats and like sort of stocking up on them before you head into like a difficult area or something. It's more dynamic, where you're just grabbing whatever's there.
Yeah, and even with like healing items, I always thought they had sort of this power creep, when it came to healing items a lot of times in the older games.
Yeah.
Where, you'd end up barely ever using the earlier ones because you'd so quickly outpace them. And the more modern takes I've seen, and I think even in 7, really, 6 and 7, and I don't remember how Kiwami 2 handled it, because it feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
But like the higher end ones, the ones you would use like Candy in older games, feel much more powerful, and they're much more harder to come by.
Yeah, I mean, that's always something in almost every video game, is that the issue of you're in a tight battle, you're getting your ass beat, you're trying to survive, the next hit is going to kill you, and so you just pause and like jam 4 orange juices up your ass and are instantly healed, and it like really kind of takes away a lot of the suspense. So it being turn-based, does that ever feel, does that make like
advantageous or disadvantageous to the game's sake?
Like, do the mob battles to the boss battles feel different? Like, usually I find with turn-based, it makes regular fights a little more boring and tedious because you know you're going to win anyway, but it makes the boss battles way more interesting.
I think it does mostly that, but it also makes the sort of slightly in between enemies pretty more interesting as well, because there are also they're more of a threat. And like they changed it so that when you're going through, like a big segment where you're in some building, like every Yakuza game has those.
Yeah.
They made it so it's like whenever you go through one of those now, if you get defeated anywhere in that, you have several options to choose from where you can either lose half your money and restart from like exactly where you were, or you can go like to the beginning of the place and lose less money. And I think the other one is just like, and maybe there's a third option, but otherwise you just reload.
Okay.
There's a little more weight to being defeated in this, and I don't know how it's going to play out in the long run. I remember hearing reviews where they said that it got a lot harder at some point. Where I just remember seeing somebody talking about having to grind at one point, but I've also seen other people say you don't need to do that. As long as you're playing strategically and whatnot. But so I've yet to really get to that point, so can't really add any comment on that. But it is something I've been aware of as a possibility, and I'm kind of curious as to how it actually plays out.
How do you find it compares to Yakuza 6?
I like it way better than 6.
Huh.
6 is sad. 6 is a little bit of a disappointment in some ways for me.
Okay.
Because I think I'd remember. I don't remember. I said this to like Leonard or somebody. Where it feels very strange. Oh no, I put it on the Yakuza channel on our Discord. It feels like if you were living in a small town or someplace you've got to be very comfortable with, and then you left for a period of time and then came back, it feels a lot like that, where everything feels just a little bit different, such that it got that uncanny point where you're like just kind of unnerved by it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, how many times? It does feel like how many times can you be in the same area?
Yeah. Kamurocho, it becomes very, it like the back of your hand for the most part throughout most of those games. And it's all, that's a big thing in Japanese stuff though. Like in a lot of the things I've seen, repetition, following the patterns, having the same stuff that you expect to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that's very big in terms of entertainment over there. Like I know, watching those New Year's Eve Batsu games, where they're like 5+ hours long. They have these segments. They always have like segments that they consistently would do, but they would, change it somewhat. But they would be, the core of it was always going to be there. Like you always know something's going to, like one person's going to do this thing or another person's going to do that thing. And you get to the point where it's like when does it become stale?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people that stuff, eventually there's going to be a consensus that enough people are going to say that we're really tired of that. Please stop or change this.
Well, they had a pretty good run with them, several decades. But I guess, I've come into Yakuza only since this renaissance with Zero and the remakes. So I've been playing, Zero, Kiwami 1, 2, 3, 4. Took a break, and then I'm going to go back to 5, 6, and then Like a Dragon. But for people that were actually following the franchise, every time they would move to a new console, they would make a test game, and it would be like a total offshoot, mm-hmm. right? Like a zombie version of it, or like a shooting version or something, and just kind of get to grips with what the new hardware can do. And then,
we never got that. We never got to experience that.
Yeah, I just remember seeing them. My only experience is seeing them in bargain bins and going like, "What the fuck is this?"
It's like shovelware.
Yeah, that's what it looked like, and it was like I just remember seeing that, and then that snowy looking adventure game. I don't know if it is an adventure game, but Lost Planet. I remember seeing that.
Oh yeah,
always sitting in those racks waiting to be purchased for $6.
I'm really interested to see how you react when you get through. If you play 6, but also when you play 5, I enjoyed 5 way more than I did 6. It's like even though I think it's a very flawed game. Um, well, it's both very flawed, but it's also really good. It had some of the best feelings in it, especially the beginning.
Yeah. 5 is the very first Yakuza I ever played, because it was a PS Plus game on the PS3 many years back. Like,
yeah, you played some of the first part, didn't you?
Yeah, so I went through that, and even though I didn't know any of these characters, I still immediately got a sense of who Kiryu was, and and he was trying to start a new life. I mean, it was like the first game where he's totally out of the Yakuza, or out of like Yakuza business. Really, well, I guess in 4 he has the orphanage, but this one he kind of leaves everything and starts out just being a regular dude, and I immediately picked up on. I thought, man, it's like very, like surprisingly cinematic, pretty funny, and the way that it shifts so quickly and so expertly between being like batshit crazy and funny, and also, or like over the top, superhuman. Looks like a Tekken fighting game. Or I guess
they really struggle with like the escalation of those plots. Like it's like everything has to be crazier than the previous game. Like I just remember in Yakuza 3, they mention the crazy organization Black Monday like 30 times, in one cutscene or something. It's just like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm
Black Monday.
I'm looking forward to 5. It'll be fun to give it a go. And as I've recently gotten an Xbox, it's just so bloody handy that it's on Game Pass. Because before, it was such a pain in the ass for me to hook up my PS3, especially because I always record everything I'm playing, or I play through a streaming setup. So the PS3, I need to like have a special adapter that comes out of it, or I need to run it through like an HDMI splitter, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and it's just nice to have my PS5, my Xbox, and the Switch, and then they cover everything that you'd want to play on them. So
I'll tell you, Game Pass does lose a few points as far as the that trilogy goes. I have the trilogy on Steam, and I'm kind of glad I do, at least for PC, because you can't. Well, Microsoft locks down the games you download on your PC for Games Pass, and so it's a lot harder if you wanted to say use some unofficial mod. And there are some for like 3, 4, and 5, and I think 6. Which 6 I played on Game Pass, so I can't do this again. Where you can like restore content that was removed, certain content specifically. Like you can. I remember in like 4, they replaced one of the character models. One of the guys involved used drugs, and they got kicked out and like completely deleted from the game, in as much as they could. And they remove a lot of the song. Well, like one of the ones that's so strange to me is like Don Quixote theme. They can't use. They don't have the license for it, so they removed it from all the games. And Pachinko, you can't play Pachinko in 3, 4, and 5. Or 6, but you can play it in 7, sort of.
Oh, okay. So Don Quixote, that's the happy, sort of poppy, jingly, jangly convenience store theme?
Mm-hmm.
And on the Game Pass versions, they've taken that out?
On any of the trilogy, any of the modern ones, anywhere they're released, it's just when you have them on your PC, there's ways of dropping that content back in.
Oh, interesting.
But they make it a lot harder because they put it on like a separate lockdown folder on your PC. I don't know. I don't know how much Microsoft does in terms of analyzing how, when files have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they do that, then that's a pain in the ass, because they're going to say, hey, this doesn't look right. We're going to check the file integrity and restore it back to and it just deletes all the stuff that you've done. Like I can only assume, due to Microsoft's tendencies, that's probably what happens.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, the other day, you and I played The Forgotten City together. Well, you'd already played through The Forgotten City, and yep. I was playing it for the first time, and I really, really liked it. The writing was so good. The characters actually responded intelligently to what you said. There were, from what I've seen so far, a lot of interesting little mysteries to figure out. I felt pretty motivated to want to go around and talk to all the characters, and it felt really exciting to come across new characters that you're going to be interacting with. And I guess
it's not like it's insane, like in terms of like how much dynamicism it had, but it is very competent, and which is enough of to put it past the bar for most games these days, right?
Yeah, well, it's surprising. I mean, a lot of video games, they may have a competent or even more competent main story, but you get pretty used to the ways you can kind of break NPCs and the ways you can confuse them and the ways that they're not going to make sense. Yeah. They're not going to respond to you in a realistic manner or in a way that's going to make you think. So when a game like this comes along, or Disco Elysium, or even like Tales from the Borderlands, it's like a really pleasant surprise, because I mean, I think most gamers are pretty tolerant of the fact that gameplay kind of comes first, and there's just so much to making a game that we get it. Not everything can be top notch, or even just to the taste of what people are looking for. So, but this game, I mean, they're a small studio. It was only like three or four people made this over 4 years, and it was a mod for Skyrim before, and it's a really very competent looking game. But they're pretty smart. They keep everything very sort of like static. They don't have a lot of like moving stuff or like little particles, or they don't try to do anything too flashy, and they just keep the combat really simple, and they make it all about the dialogue, and they have great voice acting, really great voice acting, and a nice mystery to solve, and they don't try to overcomplicate it. I will say, like, when the combat comes in, it started getting just a little bit too much.
Started to drag.
Yeah, started to drag a little. They tried to keep it interesting with some like different ways you can herd these enemies around. I know that when you start up the game, they do try to say don't like spoil the game for people past
it is
I guess
really
the main
weird.
point. So I don't know. Do they want us talking about this and spoiling
it's very
it to
strange.
it's
people? Like it's much later on. What the point they're talking about is a lot later on.
Oh, really?
Like,
I thought it was
I
when you
find
first
it
fall
very
into that bit
strange.
and go in.
I don't think so. I'm fairly certain it's not. I mean, and this is just based on me having played through the game. I've gotten all the endings and everything. Like, I mean, which I think there's just like 4 endings. So, all the endings doesn't really carry that much weight. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I really think I felt like the writers were just so involved in the entire process, which I wonder if that's the case for a lot of other games, or if the writing is very much like kind of done in a separate room, and they just sort of have to like fix everything around that later, or have these weird integration moments where they have to try to figure out how they glue those two different sort of things together in the game.
Yeah, well, from what I've read, there's actually a lot of writers are just like mistreated in the sense of, they're not like physically abused or something. Although, from what we've heard from a lot of places, I wouldn't be surprised if they were physically and sexually abused. But it's more like, here we go.
Just thinking like they have like a ball, like some steel ball tied to their wrist or something to make it harder from the right.
But also, just that a lot of writers, it's an afterthought, and they're sort of forced to make things fit within what they've done. So it seems like this one, the story was such a big part of it.
This and like you said, Elysium. I think there's just been enough games now, pretty much mostly indies, I think, or what would qualify as an indie game, that have done such a good focus on story.
And I
suspect it's mostly just because, I mostly think it's just because they're small studios, and everybody's doing everything, so you can't really, can't avoid integrating everything, as opposed to like major studios where you have like a whole writing team and like another wing of the building.
Oh God, I mean, like when you're trying to make a big giant game, that's where these directors like Kojima were able to have such a specific vision. Is very impressive, that they can handle the hundreds of staff or more. that and the amount of time it takes to put these things together and still make it feel very, very like precise. So apparently the spoiler warning is supposed to be anything from beyond the white hallway. So I assume the white hallway was when you first jumped onto that place before you travel. Is that the
I think
white
it's
hallway?
referring to something different.
Okay, so there's another white hallway later on. All right.
Yeah.
The modern storyteller team. That's quite the...
Isn't it funny that they put
the
something
name
like
they
that
give
in there?
themselves.
Because then the new player's like, what's the white hallway?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know it's going to be something very, very important. Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that one was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to playing that some more. I still throw on like Halo Infinite at the end of the day when...
And the opposite end of the spectrum as far as like writing goes.
Oh yeah, the writing is like... feels so compartmentalized. But it's the game has like great pacing, and you know when I've kind of been up and down with Halo Infinite. When I like the very first mission, I was a bit worried. I thought, oh, this just like feels like old Halo and is pretty blah. It was okay, but you know, decent little set piece. And then when you get down to the main planet and it opens up, I found it like really, really relaxing to just pick your spots. There were some nice boss battles here and there. The enemies were pretty funny, and they do that great Halo thing where they do a good job of kind of working against you. As the game is getting more challenging, I'm realizing it's like it can be kind of hard to dodge things in this game because they're not always shooting these big slow balls at you. Sometimes they're shooting those like more hit scan type weapons, and that can be a bit frustrating. They do eventually give you like a dash, and you can upgrade the dash, which is really helpful against the slow stuff. But I don't know, sometimes I'm riding around, I just think I honestly don't have like any idea how I'm supposed to be dodging this stuff unless it's like you're in a real firefight and you're keeping cover, popping out and, you know, sniping people in the head and kind of moving from cover to cover. So actually, that's probably where it becomes so much better to be playing cooperatively, because you can have one person draw fire and then you can take them out, and it's pretty satisfying and also really effective.
I wonder if that's due to level design mostly.
It could be. It really relies on there being like big giant things to hide behind.
Because of the open world aspect of it. I mean, I know there's some open levels in the earlier Halo games, but nothing like as open, where you have like the typical like, oh, this is the, you know, they're like they have like scattered on the map little, you know, in Breath of the Wild you have like little goblin camps or shrines or whatever. Like you have your little, this is an open world activity. Mm-hmm. Please enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have been impressed with like a lot of the battles they do. The difficulty's done pretty well, where they'll send like a big wave and you'll die several times, but you're never sent. Well, I've been dying several times, but I'm never sent too far back. But it's been an interesting one because it was a slow burn, and then it was really into it. Then I'm a little bit out of it now because you are kind of in this same area for a long time, and it can be kind of samey, and the enemies can also be kind of samey. So there was a brutally difficult boss. This guy that charges at you with a hammer, we have to grapple over him. And he kind of came out of nowhere. Like I knew something was coming, but I was not expecting that. And that took me a long time to find the right place to sort of hide and be able to get my shots in, because he has a regenerating shield too. So you need to like not only stay alive long enough, but do like a consistent and like close, small window of doing a lot of damage.
You've only played the first Halo. I'd be really interested to see, like, okay, maybe, I mean, I don't know if you want to wait till like, I assume you're going to try to probably beat the game, right? Infinite.
I think so. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep going through it, and if I stop enjoying it for a long stretch of time, then I'll just drop off of it, because who cares? It's on Game Pass.
I'd really like to see what you feel, or how you feel, if you went back and played Halo 2 and 3. One, honestly, you could probably just skip over because like you've already played it. I don't know. You could try it again, I guess, but I'd be really interested to see though how you feel about 2 and 3.
Which one did you say?
3 is usually considered, huh?
Which one did you say skip?
Oh, just the original one, because you already played it.
I did, yeah, yeah.
I mean, you could probably go back if you just want to screw around with it. Like, because there are some like good moments, really within like what the first major level. I think that most people like from that game. And after that,
it's really similar to this one. I mean, you have that big moment on the ship, and like I believe they sort of like invade the ship, and you're fighting them off, and then you end up in the big grassy green open world, and then you're hiding behind rocks and sort of making your way back. That's my memory of it.
I'd be curious to see though how you react to 2 and 3. 3 is usually considered, or at least a lot of people I've seen really like 3. They think it's the best.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I mean, I don't know how that's evolved since Infinite, by the way.
Yeah,
but
I mean, Halo 2 was so huge just because of the online. I mean, that's when it really clicked together. You had broadband online with a great Xbox Live, and that was just a killer app, and it got all these console people that had never played a PC shooter online before were into this like super fun competitive world.
I don't think there were any bosses like of the traditional sense in Halo 1. I don't remember there being like any particular enemies that were highlighted in there. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So like 2 and 3, you start getting your more modern game elements where it's like you have bosses that you have to fight and everything, and that sort of aligns more with Infinite. I feel like Halo 1 is a lot more different in that sense. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a cross between Halo 1 and like Halo 2 or 3, I guess, in some ways. Mm-hmm. Halo 1 kind of had that openness a little bit, and Halo 2 and 3, they have open moments, but they also have those like really traditional design elements that I think it'd just be interesting to see how you think a boss, say, in Infinite compares to a boss in 2 or 3.
I've enjoyed the bosses in Infinite, and like a lot more than I was really expecting to. So that's been a really nice surprise. So yeah, and I guess like Halo. So Bungie was making. When did Bungie jump off? What Halo?
I think it was after. I want to say what was after ODST. Because they had Halo 1, 2, 3, ODST, Halo Wars 1 and 2. Halo Reach. And I think those were all Bungie.
Okay.
I think everything after was 343.
All right. Okay. Anything else you've been playing that you wanted to talk about, or?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I had Loop Hero, which is pretty cool, but you know, there's not. I don't know how much there is really to say about some of those.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We had the stuff about PS3.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that another day. That'll be fun.
Okay.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.